Zeth, the striving cat-rat, for overcoming the heavy weight of sin, is all alone with blood all over him. His clothes were torn into pieces, and parts of his skin was chewed off. He should have been dead, yet he wasn't, and for some odd reason Capron was nowhere around. All Zeth could see was a large hole in the wall, showing the sky with the sounds of the winds blowing with a very high pitch and a frequency. Zeth knew something was strange and struggled to say these words. So he came, oft, after all. Zeth says as he was crawling painfully and was about to attempt to pursue one of his most difficult challenges. Zeth emerges and has to descend down the stairs of a skyscraper, which happens to be around 170,000 feet. Every time Zeth tried to descend each staircase, he shaked and tremored as if he was having seizures. The amount of energy that he had to put forth was like a vehicle being driven with no rubber on rusty old rims. Despite the shape Zeth is in, the achievement of each floor was not impossible. However, the biggest problem was not managing to reach all the way to the ground. It was instead the worry of other members of the Insintation coming to get him. Standing still on the first level of the stairs, Zeth slipped down and landed his nose on the wall. "Ow!" said Zeth in a bitter tone. There was another stair level that he had to descend, a level that stood above thousands of levels, that he had to further his journey. There should be no such thing as to take a nap for himself, especially under and above these circumstances. By dragging and crawling himself to his left in direction, Zeth was making a trail of blood down the stairs. Remember, he had just been beaten by Capron. The next staircase that he was carefully descending felt strange to him. It was as if he was feeling a burning sensation from the first level, and then a cool breeze came upon him at this second position. Each staircase was pulling him closer and closer into throwing his balance off his feet and hands. Each level of stairs had 80 staircases, and Zeth was nowhere near the bottom, with his second level that he was positioned. Now when it comes to using the elevator, Zeth was unable to use it, not only because of how badly hurt he was, it's that the elevators in the tallest skyscraper on Insintation had passcodes in order to operate them. So this has made it incredibly difficult to have to sustain moving down the stairs. Once he reached the 65th staircase, Zeth again loses his balance, begins rolling around the level and lands on his back. Zeth shrugged his shoulders and continued making his way down the left side again and began to descend through the third level. As Zeth began going down the third level, something felt different in both a good and bad way. Zeth's eyes looked disturbed, and his mouth changed reactions rapidly. Zeth could feel it, and it was not from any outside energy. This feeling was within him more than just a gut feeling, and he just couldn't understand it. Zeth fell for the third time, however it took him only halfway down the staircase as he tumbled and rolled. Not all the way down the level like the last time. As he was carefully trying to maneuver down each case, Zeth could have sworn he heard scratching noises all around him. These new sounds made Zeth alert, and yet the unknown made him feel unsettled. At this time Zeth decides to get to the fourth level fast. Turning to his left, the lights in the building began flickering in sequences of 15 to 30-second intervals. Zeth caught his breath after he began panting furiously so that he could look to his right and his left to scope out his perimeters. No one was around. This made Zeth very curious and unstable for the moment. Was he overreacting? Or is it because of the insatiable encounters or the fact that something was out there? Descending the fourth level was like putting 5,000 milligrams of melatonin into his symptom. Zeth began feeling drowsy, and for a moment he passes out and falls asleep with the front of his body sliding downwards on the stairs. He was lying on the fifth level. He just gives out and falls into a deep sleep or trance. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Zeth hears the same female voice that said his name before he lost the fight with Capron says again, "Zeth." Zeth returns the gesture with a raspy voice and says, "Lincent?"
"Zeth,"
said Lincent softly. Zeth answers back, "Okay, Lincent, you can cut that creepy howling sound out. There is no need to call my name like that twice." Not listening to Zeth, Lincent with a coarse ghoulish sound from deep within says again, "Zeth. That really isn't an attractive or appealing way to say my name, Lincent," said Zeth.
"Zeth."
Lincent lashes out with all her vocal response she could muster. Several Z's and snoozes later, Zeth awakes and starts again down the stairs. He felt like utter crap when he awoke, so by now, he is angrier than scared at this moment in time. However, the fear is beginning to take over his mind. His eyes opening wider and his body begins to tingle and shiver as he thinks about what he will face next. Down the stairs, a faint voice can be heard.
Zeth.
In a thought of dismay, Zeth became horrified of the unknown. Knowing that a false Lincent could actually get a hold of him. Zeth, please. You have to believe me. The voice travels and he realizes that this Lincent could be seemingly real.
How can I know it is you? And not some consumed monster of evil? How can I know when I have heard the unearthed monster in you? How? How? Lincent, how can I know?
Said Zeth. Zeth, you might be right, and no one should ever be near the likes of me. Said the seemingly real Lincent. What are you talking about? Returned Zeth.
Lincent, answer me please. Don't leave me. Every time I go through so much crap every day by Yogo and the incantation. You have become the key to open a door that unlocks me from the dark. Lincent, come back!
Zeth desperately cries out. Still no answer.
Lincent!
Zeth exhausts at the top of his now weakened vocals. Through great strain, Zeth struggles to hurry his motion downwards and says, I'm not letting you go, Lincent. We are going to get out of this, do you hear me? Just you wait and see, this incantation debacle is going to end very soon. I'm coming for you, Lincent, hold on. Finally, as Zeth reaches the 6th level, there was a sixth sense surrounding Zeth, causing an inner panic, raising his body's adrenaline and sanity on the outside. Midway down the 6th level he crawls, and all the lights had been shut down throughout the whole building, so it was move by move downwards. At first his breathing began as a panting, then he built his confidence up and almost spoke again. However, despite the boost in confidence, it quickly disappeared into desperation. Knowing that whatever he was going to face, the chances of him surviving in such a severely injured state was going to be an unlikely victory for Zeth. And he knew it too. At this time, not being able to see in the dark, Zeth endured unspeakable hardship as he descended. Suddenly, the turns on in the effervescent light turns the light emergency boxes. The light's power sources were at a low, so it was still difficult to see. Zeth used this light to follow shadowing and depth to feel his way. His hands raw and knees aching, each move became more and more impossible. Reaching for the 7th floor, he felt like he was locked in a room with temperatures above 120 degrees. The balance in his hands and position made him shake profusely. If Zeth doesn't get to the 7th floor, he's going to crash down again. As he reaches the second to last step of the 6th floor, he felt a cold foot stomp on his fingers. Zeth gasps and falls to the 7th floor, crawling as fast as he could. Zeth made his way to the center of the floor where the emergency light was, and he sat and gasped for air. As Zeth scoped his perimeter, he noticed, except for the emergency lights and nothing but darkness, that he was in a panic. However, he was not screaming, just freaking out about the unknown. Zeth knew he had to control his emotions. He cannot lose focus now. Then suddenly pain soared throughout Zeth's wrists, causing him to burst out in torment. It was the venom from Capron's fangs that was coursing in Zeth's body throughout his veins. From yelling to barely breathing, Zeth shakes like someone having seizures. Fading into the darkness, nearly passing out, Zeth knew he had to endure and become immune to the venom at the same time. Tightening his fist, clenching his teeth and squirming, the cat rat was in a battle against a disease that was putting him on the brink of death. The blood cells were turning green and brown, causing Zeth to feel fiercely cold while sweating out. Zeth begins coughing as if he were in a smoke-filled room and coughed so much that he began to choke. His legs were moving directional like a snake, coiling in and out, and the rest of his body slowed down to almost a stop. Death was coming. All that Zeth could wonder to himself was the actual fact of going down further into the darkness or not. Would it be his solution? Was there ever a huge point in doing all this, fighting the evil? Is existence with the highest truth or illusion to what we all must put forth? Was the way to avoiding a nihilistic plane all a lie? Zeth couldn't think anymore. His mind was plummeting down quickly into a master incantation's wants or needs, from their view which is void. Zeth was enraged by their motives, which actually helped him breathe a little easier. His body moving faster and his persistence rising higher. Zeth was not giving up. He fought the venom like a child lifting 300 pounds. Zeth growled like a demon-possessed woman, grabbed his hair frantically, and cried like a baby, eyes bawling and raining tears. Slamming his right hand down onto the floor, Zeth's eyes looked like a deranged rabid dog. His voice cracked and gurgled as if cancer had eaten his neck apart. The pulse in his veins had raised so much that his skin looked like inflated runways. The veins on his wrists enlarged to where they were blue, shining through pink aura. Everything his eyes saw were bundles of distorted colors of red, purple, and sometimes light blue. This made Zeth find humor in how he looked dying. Suddenly he begins laughing like a maniac. He stood up on his feet and echoed his laughter throughout the whole building.
Zeth is hallucinating and acting like an overdose of meth had hit his system,
said Zeth, continuing his hysteria. In just a few seconds Zeth fell on his backside, clenched his teeth, and hissed like a cat. For a while his skin was appearing as if large snakes were traveling under his skin. He hears a ringing noise. The noise was so bad that he closed his eyes, his head moved left and right slowly, and his mouth opened and shut rapidly. More pain arrives for Zeth. Zeth's hands lose control and start choking himself around the neck. This was the effect of the venom. Zeth's arms then turns into bare heads with eagle eyes, and they both say, "Plummeting is a treacherous lane to go by, wouldn't you agree?" Zeth yells back,
"No, I do not agree."
Zeth takes control of his bear-like arms and says, "Or at least I don't agree with what you're referring to. It's not about falling into darkness, it's the courage to defeat it. Not being of the tearing that it does." Wait, why the hell am I talking to my arms? Zeth immediately went back to normal. As he continued to feel more pain from the venom inside him, germs and microscopic robots were destroying the cells in Zeth's body. This results to crying out blue goo from his eyes. "Is this attack of fire ants gonna stop already?" said Zeth. Beyond his injuries and pain from the venom, Zeth slams his head on the floor and knocks himself out. Over 20 seconds of darkness and silence passes until a female voice that sounded like Lincent spoke out and said, "What are you doing, Zeth? Come out here, and let's enjoy our paradise." In an explosion of light, a beautiful world was shown. It was very colorful. The ponds and skies were crystal clear. There were tons of people playing and singing. It was all perfect. The grass felt like warmth, giving Zeth comfort and joy. Suddenly, he sees Lincent with an anthropomorphic rabbit child. Zeth smiled and walked towards them, going to the most fun places he had ever been to. The rabbit boy held Zeth's left hand, then held Lincent's right hand, and they both swung arms with him. After that they flew up into the sky and were fascinated by all of the creative designs that people were creating with clouds. They went inside a swirling bright yellow energy of a tornado, and unlike most tornadoes, it did not harm them. As they were spinning around and around inside it, all of them said, "We." After having so much fun, they saw a bright, gorgeous yellow energy in the sky and raised their hands up into the air, praising it. "Isn't this amazing, Zeth? How Bill is so happy with what's going on. No more sorrow, no more pain, no more death. We have finally made it to our destination, right?" said Lincent. Lincent looked to her side and gave a concerned expression from her face. "Zeth, are you okay?" said Lincent in a more concerned tone. Tears were coming down from Zeth's eyes, and as he began to cry out loud, everything around him turned gray, melted and withered away. A voice was heard in the background that said, "Cringes, yeah, don't it?" Zeth had heard this voice before. It was from many of the criminals that lived down in the city of whom he had encountered before. His name is Maskcat. As Zeth turned around, he could not see him clearly. He appeared bubbly pink with a distorted hollow blur on the apparent head. This appearance was due to the result of the venom that is currently inside Zeth. "Oh no, don't worry. I'm not here to pull any of the things that irritated you in the past. I'm just interested in giving you some insight on what the incantation does to your soul." Zeth showed a lot of anger in his eyes, and Maskcat says, "That venom can sure inflame inner wants. It's surely a remarkable sight to behold. They said you might eventually cry over it, not in terms of pain, well maybe sometimes, but on the topic of what you're striving for, it could lead you into a burdensome old piece of rookus." Zeth gave a more hateful expression on his face and Maskcat says, "And already it's showing." Maskcat took a breath and says, "It's for sure a tension that is soft as a subtle flute, and some of us do know very clearly that it is within this very soul in front of me." How could it? Also, do you think I'm lying? Because if you do, then why are there tears coming down from your eyes? Just see it for the story, Zeth, and realize that tension of wanting greater is what your soul truly is and what it must be, or better yet, what everyone should be. That green paper, the manageable reminder of the limitations of the boundaries of reality, creates an organism of pressure in our many thoughts that are a craving to steal the working energy out of people. Like bad writing for movies as a plain old ripoff, one way or another the pressure comes into its manifestation towards the experience of the individual. Strangely enough, your corrupt energy-thieving boss throws that green paper away for what himself? Yes, it is himself. That's just how fat his ego is. Pure self only by refusing the faces of green paper that did not show himself. Now cry my word of child buffoonery. It's a great zoom into his character as well as what we are. We're spawn of the greed master Zeth. I want it all and you want it all. Of course it's for good intentions, but does he want you to do that? Well, he does, though at the same damn time he doesn't. Does that even make sense? I don't think it does. It just raises the stress into wanting to become him, which shows it will end up doing the first sin. There are clues to this with a story of zillions of people living in greatness for centuries, until a single implement of a thought returned unto man, which showed our more intriguing side of ourselves. Surely everyone knows. Hell, even people living under a rock should realize this by now, unless they are so into their own gain. It could be said that would be the reason why it's never known to the sight of gaining more money. That unconditional tendency is something that I burned a long time ago. Are you screwing with my ears? Hardly anyone does that, ever, said Maskcat. One time there was this rich man who thanked and offered me money. I took it and burned it, said Zeth. Why? Said Maskcat. Because of how it came into our stupidity. We could have had almost anything we wanted, with no payment. Sure, if it weren't for such foolishness, I could have donated money to charity. However, that's a scam, full of bull ploppings and lies, and as generous as it would be to the poor, I've offered a different solution for them to survive. It makes them far better off than with this dumb thing that should have never have amounted to anything to begin with. Now leave before I beat the crap out of you again, said Zeth with confidence on his face. In a few seconds Maskcat left and Zeth was back in pain of the poison in him. Unlike the pain he was in before, Zeth was starting to adapt to it. He knew for a fact that this wasn't the worst Capron has offered by poisoning people. One shake made Zeth's face look as if his very soul was sucked out and had memorials flow through his mind. Memories of what he had to do in order to go up against the incantation, being almost restless into becoming a spiritual influence on the hearts of the people. Throughout his years of doing the good he's accomplished, it is not much in comparison of bringing down the bad that the incantation have caused. Sending the world into an uncleansed disaster that will end as hard as a 10-mile train falling down from the sky. Zeth vomited, purple vomit with green stripes, on the floor, and heard a voice of his child self saying, "Shameful clouds, you lousy cat rat, it is a no matter that makes sure that this no matter will go for that cracked road. This cat rat thinks he can leap too." Out of shame, Zeth placed his arms on his face and made a quiet cry. And what did I say? It's got the cat rat like a bear feasting on his surrendered humiliation, said the voice of his child self. Red spiderlegs stabbed Zeth's right shoulder, causing him to yell while clenching his teeth. Another red spiderleg was coming to Zeth. This one was slower than the others. It twitched in a haywire and made nasty loud popping sounds. Zeth tried to pull the spiderlegs off of his right shoulder, however the spiderlegs twisted around causing more pain on him. As the red spiderleg was halfway there, it had black spider bite wounds on it with hair sticking out of it. What can Zeth do? He was helpless and felt even more pain coursing down his flesh, with red spiderlegs slowly tearing his skin. The red spiderleg drilled into Zeth's mouth, pulling the inside of his throat. Zeth then heard an unappealing voice saying, "And the showdown has arrived, whores and assholes," with Zeth getting jumped by the most unattractive legs in history. In a flash of a second Zeth saw a shirt fall that read Travis Oliver Morrow Kane. From downstairs he saw spirits of neutral minds, until another red spider leg spewed out black energy unto the souls. As Zeth reached out with his arm and tried to give those souls the energy of righteousness, it was greatly overshadowed by the might of the spider leg's dark energy. "We shall sin," said the souls. Bit by bit, Zeth began to tear and claw the red spider legs that was in his throat. By managing to claw and tear the first layer of the leg, slug centipedes slithered around the red spider leg in his mouth. With Zeth clawing and tearing the second layer, the sluggish centipedes were 5 inches away from him. As Zeth attempted to grab the sluggish centipede, roots of the red spider legs that was on his body began to grow, causing a suffering and temporary stun for him. The sluggish centipedes managed to get a hold of him and sunk their teeth on his chest. Zeth tried his hardest to tear the third layer, however it was much harder than the previous 2, which made it more difficult for him to do. Despite the difficulty, Zeth was managing to take pieces off from the third layer and punched the sluggish centipedes on his chest, to their death. As Zeth was almost done getting rid of the third layer, the spirits that he failed to give a righteous mind channeled evil dark red energy on him, saying, "Please the frustration, please it." At first Zeth gave in, tearing the layer faster and faster. However, as he was doing this he stopped and calmly tore the third layer off. After the third layer was ripped off, there was a slimy dark green skeletal line that Zeth needed to get rid of. When he grabbed a hold of it, loud bad quality sounds screeched out and acid was about to spew out from the torn spider leg. Out of the shadows, more red spider legs launched in his mouth and nostrils, causing a nasty itch in his nose. The red spider legs pulled him closer into the shadows. Zeth knew he had to act fast before he got there. He used the torn spider leg's acid to burn the other legs off and tore the torn leg in half, which led him to fall down halfway of the giant skyscraper. He managed to grab a hold of the rail of the stairs. With all his might, Zeth managed to get on the staircase and roll down to the next floor. Breathing heavily and raspy, Zeth coughed some more and was ready to fall asleep. He just couldn't do it anymore. The stress was too much for him to handle, and by that he passed out. Out of the darkness appeared a beautiful ocean with skies crystal blue clear. "I thought I got you out of quitting, now look what's happening," said Lincent. "What do you mean?" said Zeth. "Just all the pile of trash thrown on top of you, which makes me the encourager, encourages you to lift that trash," said Lincent. "I don't want to do it," said Zeth. "If you don't, then that freaky thing will do the worst to your body. Do you really want that?" said Lincent. "By hoping for the freaky thing to get it over with, then yes, I want to be a righteous hero, but this is too much for me to swallow. I've done so much of this that I'm tired of it," said Zeth. "So am I. However, we have to keep going, Zeth. It will pay off, I promise," said Lincent.
What part of this situation don't you freaking understand? I'm done. I'm freaking done. No more, damn it. No more.
A storm arrived with Lincent into the depths of the sea.
I'm giving up,
said Zeth, despite Zeth saying that he thought about what he'd be missing if he did give up, which would put him into the conclusive decision of saving Lincent from drowning. Going down felt like a wild ride. With sharks biting him, squid spewing poison, etc., Zeth still prevailed and saved Lincent from drowning. Zeth woke up and saw the creature with red spider legs. It stayed positioned in front of Zeth with spiderwebs around it. The creature had a light blue slimy face with large purple and green striped lips. It had one completely green eye, no pupils, just cornea. It had long brown hair, no eyebrows, and a disfigured cockroach body with torn spider legs. There in between Zeth and the slimy creature were the souls that Zeth failed to channel his energy on. Zeth had to get up and channel his energy so that these souls would realize that this creature is plaguing them with perversion. The slimy creature whipped Zeth down on the floor, and that just made him more persistent to get back up. Again, the slimy creature whipped him back on the floor, and Zeth put forth more effort into getting back up. With the third whipping, Zeth continued to achieve what he was doing. The fourth arrived, and that didn't stop Zeth in the slightest. The fifth slammed hard down on his back. He smiled back at the creature and continued trying to get up. The sixth one was the hardest slam whip the slimy creature has done to Zeth, and for a while he lay down there looking quite defeated until he attempted to get up once more. As the slimy creature was about to do the seventh slam whip, Zeth cut off with his arms and channeled his arms and his energy on the souls in front of them. Zeth still kept using his energy on the souls, and the slimy creature used its energy on the souls to live in the hollows of sin. This caused a power struggle between the two of the souls, feeling unsure of the path they should take. Eventually Zeth's energy was flickering, and the slimy creature's energy was getting larger. Zeth then had an idea to use for his energy on souls, which is not simply righteous, it was more or so joy, happiness, and faith on the souls, which began to turn the tide in the heat of the spiritual battle between Zeth and the slimy creature. The slimy creature endorsed doubt and sorrow with its energy on the souls, and Zeth used joy and grateful energy on the souls. The souls were beginning to see who the real enemy was, and Zeth yelled out,
"For hope!"
One last burst of energy exploded out of Zeth's hand unto the souls, and by this they charged unto the slimy creature, causing it to let go of Zeth drastic. Zeth, struggling to stand up, says,
"I need an aid of energy. Please aid me."
A few of the souls went into Zeth, which allowed him to have enough energy to give one last attack on the slimy creature. Zeth jumped off the rails and said, "Now all aid me." As all of the souls went into Zeth, he used it all for one huge punch on the slimy creature, going all the way down the giant skyscraper. Finally reaching to the bottom, Zeth has defeated the slimy creature. The souls left, and the slimy creature's last words were, "When they come from under, the farewell shall be the family's greetings." Those words were heard many times before with Zeth's childhood, a prophecy of horrors, embraced from the complete depraved and warped people who have turned into sickos. Zeth knows it all too well of the worst being yet to come, and he feels quite unsettled into facing it. Zeth crawled and thought about what Maskcat was telling him and wondered about success, on how it forms a tendency of overwanting things, and arrived to a conclusion of success. It is not the true cause of evil, it is the view on evil of success that sets the damage in motion. While failure may be needed once in a while for realization of wrong, in the end, with or without failure, the view will always be there, and it is up to the person to go for the path that they want to go with their own view. Having a lot of trouble getting up, Zeth felt like he needed at least one night off from this. He could not keep on going with this condition. However, he's still not going to quit, he just needs a break. The relief of getting that stress off his shoulders felt very satisfying. However, he needed to get out of there. Because of the incantation guards coming in, the odds would have been overwhelming. Even at his best shape, it's still difficult. He has to get out of there now. Crawling as quick as a snake chasing after a rat, Zeth managed to find an opening through the vents, and carefully, slowly, he found a way outside. It was windy outside, and Zeth could hear faint sounds of laser blast and energy. Zeth wondered for a moment of what it was and figured out that help is here. Motivation arose within Zeth. He got back up and looked around to see where the help was. He heard loud, heavy foot stomps. Zeth's eyes looked a bit tensed, his mouth stern, and turned around. Coming to Zeth, they shadowed all over him. The shadow gave the appearance of a huge fat being. The shadow was shown popping the knuckles. Zeth has arrived at a further showdown against unbearable weighted down forces, and looked a bit angered at what he was looking at. End of chapter.